Can you tell me what service you were in and why you chose that branch?
First of all, I was in the 174th Armored Infantry Battalion, New York Army National Guard. I was 16 years old when I joined. Then I went to the U.S. Navy in 1957, May 11th, by the way, 1957, April 11th, I'm sorry. And then I went, many things I did, but anyways, then I went in the Navy, anyway, 1957.
And why did you choose to go in the Navy?
Well, I was in the National Guard and I didn't want to be in the Army. But the Navy offered me a great deal. I went to aviation school and they offered me aviation electronics school. That's why I went in the Navy.
Well, what did you do as in the aviation electronics school?
Well, I went to Bainbridge, Maryland. That was my boot camp. By the way, it's closed now. But anyway, then I went to Millington, Tennessee, to what they call an A school. And I went there for about a year, and it was all aviation electronics.
Can you tell us what exactly you did in your time of service?
Yeah, okay. From Bainbridge, from Millington, Tennessee, I graduated in A school. And then I went out to Norman, Oklahoma, which was called Aviation Preparatory School. And then from there, I went out west to California. It was called Imperial Beach, California. And I went in helicopters. I was in HS-8, which was helicopter anti-submarine. Also search and rescue we did.
Can you tell us about your transition into the military, how it was for you, and then after the fact of when you decided to get out and become a civilian again?
Well, first of all, when I went in the military, I was a young man going to high school. And then I had little problems in high school. So I decided to join the service, and that was then in '57.
If you don't mind telling us, like what kind of problems that led you into wanting to join the military?
Well, I didn't like high school that much, of course, but I was almost a senior. I was a junior. And then I got little problems as a kid, and that's what made me join the Navy.
Okay. So you joined the military. How long did you spend in?
I had 4.5 years in the U.S. Navy. But anyway, from when I went out to Imperial Beach, and that was our base for our squadron. And then I took 2 cruises overseas. The first cruise I went overseas, it was more or less in peacetime. And I had a 7-month cruise, 58 and 1958. But we also went to Lebanon then. We were cruising Lebanon when they had the Lebanon skirmish.
Can you tell us about your transition out of the military and how you changed as a person?
Well, let me tell you first of all about the Navy and what I did in there. Again, I was anti-submarine, and also I was search and rescue. And I was in there, and we went to Lebanon. Then I was one of the first outfits that went to Vietnam, but we went to Laos. We flew the Marines into Laos. That was in 1961. In fact, it was on my birthday, January 1st, 1961. And that was when they said there wasn't no Vietnam, but there was. And when I got out of the Navy, they sent me to, I got out in San Diego, California. And the transition they did for us, we had to go like 3 weeks to get out of the service and become in civilian life again. And it was kind of a transition, yes. But I was a young man. I was only 21 years old. And I come back here, and I didn't have no real battles. I was over in Nam, and we flew Marines in there, but I was never in no firefights or nothing like that. But to come out of the service after 4.5 years, there's a transition. Sure there is. transition or whatever.
You recently, if you don't mind talking about this, had a bout with cancer.
Yes, I did.
Do you think the military helped you to be ready or more prepared than that than a normal person would be?
Well, let me tell you, that was the greatest time of my life other than having children. The military was great for me. I loved it. It was the greatest thing I ever did in my life. Again, a young man, 17 years old till I was 21. It was great. Sure, it helped me. It gave me the confidence. You know, I was trained real well.
I had something else I wanted to ask. You joined the first the Guard,
Yes.
and then the Navy. You didn't graduate high school.
No, I didn't. But my first year in the Navy, I got my GED. 1958, I got my GED.
What made you want to join the military before you finished? Just to get away, or just because you didn't like high school?
Well, yes, because I did like high school. But, you know, it was just after the Korean War, and I was just a typical American that wanted to go and take care of my country. And to be honest with you, yeah. I was a young kid that says, I want to be there and be part of my country and be part of a serviceman.
Is there anything any life experiences you've had where you look back on it and you think, if I didn't spend my time serving my country, it might have been a little different?
Oh, definitely. There's no doubt about it. I wish all kids would do it now. When, in my day and age, most everybody went in the service. And it was a thing that we believed in. And also, yes, it gave me, I tell you, the training, when I come out, it was great. I just can't tell you enough about it. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, I went in, everybody was going in World War II. I was 16, and most of all my friends were in that range. So we forged our birth certificates, and they took them without even asking another question. Then they took us in the Navy. And we had some good times in there. Went on destroyers. And they knew we were 16, 17. But there was a lot of old timers on board, and they took care of us. We had a good time. We were up in the Baffin Islands chasing submarines. The Nazis were getting out of Europe with all the oils from the museums, valuable stuff, and they were taking them out in submarines. Some of the officers were in full dress uniform. But we weren't interested in that. We were given diminished, what they call diminished depth charges. They used to rattle them a lot, but not kill them, you know. We rattled them until we raised them. And they raised, and they surrendered. But we didn't take them as prisoners or nothing. We turned them over to the Canadian Navy. And they took them ashore in Newfoundland, retrieved all the treasure. We went after more. We got we raised 6 submarines like that. 7 of them, we accidentally sunk it. We didn't mean to, but it was a beauty, and it had 39 ships on there, on this thing. That it sunk, so we cheered when it went down. Took a lot of their crew with it. and the war ended, we cruised all over the world, went every place. Stayed in the Navy until '48. We were in New Orleans. I was getting discharged, and I was a torpedoman. And I wasn't in the deck crew or nothing. I was a separate rank. But the captain ordered our ship to be decorated, you know, when we went into port with all the flags. We were doing that. We took all the depth charges out of the racks and painted them, painted the racks. They had these wooden pins that they put in instead of putting the copper pins back in to keep them from rolling into the water. Well, they put them in, and the paint was all dry, and they says, put the depth charges back in the racks. Now these are all live depth charges. So they started rolling them in. I heard one go splash in the water. I said, Jesus, that's a live charge. You know how a charge in the water, they had the wooden pins still in, and they just broke off. Well, we stopped all shipping on the Mississippi for 3 days. Can you imagine that? One little ship, and we did that, and it was in the newspapers and everything. But they kept our names out. We were exonerated. That's the fun part of the Navy. And I got out, spent some time going to school, stuff like that. A bunch of us guys got together. We were all ex-Navy men. Korean War broke out. We all joined the paratroopers. Dominic says to me, let's join the paroopers. I said, what's the paroopers? He says, the paratroopers. He says, you nuts? He says, we're all Navy men. That's all right. We all went. We got in Dominic's yellow convertible. We all went to the old post office. We all enlisted. We all went to paratrooper school. And we jumped in Korea. I don't want to get into that. It was very hectic. It was 6 of us all together from South Buffalo. I'm the only one to come back. I was wounded a couple times, decorated, and that's all I want to talk about. Korea. I got out of the Korea, and I went to work for General Electric, and hired on with the Air Force as a consultant to the Air Force. And I worked all over the world, and mostly in plain clothes. I run my own outfit. With this, we were sort of an undercover agency. I was assigned to a spy unit called the U2. I'm sure you heard of it. Francis Gary Powers. He was shot down over Russia. There was 5 of us involved. He was a pilot, I was a co-pilot, he was a mechanic. I was a TACAN man, that's Tactical Air Navigation Systems. I helped him get through the mountains. I was in Peshawar, Pakistan, 59. And well, our president met with Khrushchev in Paris, and Khrushchev asked him if we're flying over Russia. And Ike said no, and he had a picture of our plane and the wreckage on the back of a truck. and he had our pilot in jail. So we got caught in a red hot situation, world situation. And the rest will detail itself. He did 3 years in prison and he was let go. And there were a lot of details in that. There's a book about it. And those are some of the serious things. But there's a lot of funny things that happen. And I wish I could tell you those. But I don't want to get into any combat stuff. I lost all my best friends. And I lost my son. He was killed in 1986 over in Romania during the Cold War. And I don't go around and decorate myself with all kinds of veteran here, veteran there. I don't do that. I don't like to talk about it. It's not easy. And besides, it's over 70 years ago. And you get over that. Other than that, it's been a good life. Got a little medical problems, you know. Had a few wounds. This is a plastic eye, I don't know if you noticed that. But that's about it.
All right.
Get on our way.
Well, I guess we don't need it. We might have an audio recorder. Can you give me your full name and your service and the time you served?
My name is Clinton Brown. I served in the military from June 6th of 1966 until June 5th, 1969. And I was in the Army.
What made you want to join the military at this time, and why did you choose the Army?
Well, at the time that I went into the military, it was compulsory. So I was actually drafted into the military. And once I got in, they talked to me about MOS, and they talked to me about a country of choice. I chose Germany, and I chose communications. So I took an additional year and went regular Army rather than U.S.
Did you enjoy your time of service, and do you have any regrets?
No, I enjoyed my time of service. I think I learned a lot. I think I grew up a lot, and I have no regrets at all. You know, if I was in light of today's military, if I was young enough, I would join again. I have no problem. I had no problem at all with the service. I enjoyed it, and as a matter of fact, I looked on it as one of the greatest assets to my life in terms of growing up, in terms of education, in terms of travel. And the only time it became I would say a negative to me was when I came in 2007 and I started going to the VA and they started dealing with me with post-traumatic stress. And then I saw how combat had affected my life. But other than that, I have no regrets at all.
What does being a veteran mean to you?
Well, being a veteran means to me that I walk in the same footsteps and I'm in the same book as George Washington as a veteran of the military. And we defend the policies of America, and we would like to think in some small way what we did actually help promote freedom throughout the world and try to get the freedom for others in other countries that we enjoy here in America. And I don't feel so much that we are defending our freedom because our freedom is pretty secure, but to help other people enjoy the freedoms that we have, the education, and all of the things that they don't have in other countries.
What are your thoughts on serving your country and supporting a war? Do you believe they're the same thing?
In certain ways. Serving the country and in supporting war, it's something that has to be done, but I don't think that 100% of our society should be participating in supporting the war. I think that we have to have some people that have an opposing viewpoints to keep things in balance. But I think that to serve our country, I think it's an honor that we will never forget. It will build certain characteristics in you that you wouldn't get otherwise, and it actually give you somewhat of an advantage when you're competing in the marketplaces for jobs and other positions.
I had something else I wanted to ask you. As far as the military being a completely volunteer, what do you think the difference now is between then, as far as being drafted and being a volunteer?
Well, since it's a volunteer army, sometimes I don't feel that we get the full cross-section of society in the military that we would get if it was a draft situation. Because most people, if they have a choice and they have the money and the means to do it, they want to keep their sons out of the military. And in that way, I think it's robbed of a lot of leadership that it would have. It's robbed of a lot of creativity that would be on the battlefield. And in some ways, maybe war would be less of an object to us. Maybe we wouldn't be involved in certain circumstances that we are. But I think patriotism doesn't necessarily require one to serve in the military, but I think it's an honor for someone to have to do so. But if I was the person, say the president, I would be very careful about the battles that I choose and the ones that I ask parents to sacrifice their sons and daughters at this point for.
What misconceptions would you like to clear up about veterans that people have in society today?
One of the things that I would like to clear up about veterans and the way society look at veterans, a lot of people in society think that we should be pitied, and a lot of people in society look at us as though we are at a disadvantage, and I don't think that to be the case. And some of the things like the celebrations that we have, like recently we had Veterans Day, we have Memorial Day, and in most cases people just look at that as a day to get off work, and they don't really understand the real meaning and the sacrifice and the dedication that people have that go into the military. And those type celebrations, even though I know it's done from the heart and people really feel good about what they do, but it doesn't make me feel great as being a veteran. It's kind of marginalized what a veteran does and what the military stand for.
What would you like to say to veterans and civilians out there?
Well, I would like to say to veterans particularly, I don't have a whole lot to say to civilians because civilians have their point of view and they can never view life from the standpoint of a veteran, even in terms of if the person didn't serve in combat, but if they served and traveled the world and the knowledge of people that they have. I would like to say to veterans that we should come together and try to understand the issues that we face in coming back to civilian life, and we shouldn't have it incumbent on the civilians to try to make us feel comfortable because of our knowledge, because of the strength and things that we have developed. We should try to teach our families and our friends about our experiences and not shy away from them so that they can better understand who we are. Because in going through the process at the VA, I understood, my psychologist explained one thing to me. War, sometimes there are unintended consequences of war, PTSD and the things that go with it, because most of the things we do is against our cultural beliefs, but we have to do it because of our duties to our country and to our Constitution. But I would like veterans to say, stop feeling sorry for themselves and start thinking they have done a noble thing. And until recently, no person in America, whether it was in business, government, or any other form of leadership, all of them had military experiences. And until the last 20, 30 years, people got in leadership that didn't have military experience. Because of the way that people viewed the Vietnam War, then veterans became more marginalized and less embraced in our society. But I would just say to all veterans, you have the ability to lead, you have physical courage, you have mental courage and spiritual courage. Just go out and become involved in our society. Get yourself in leadership roles and don't look at other people as being particularly bad because they haven't had our experiences. But use our experiences, use what we have learned to guide the country and to lead the people, not look at them as being bad, but we have something to offer to our country.
We are recording. Okay. Can you give me your name and rank, please?
John Mulkern, Corporal,
And what branch of the military were you in?
United States Marine Corps. Hoorah!
And why did you choose the United States Marine Corps?
I chose the Marine Corps because my grandfather was in the Marine Corps, and when I looked at the other branches services, the Marine Corps provided the biggest challenge for me at the time when I was coming out of high school.
So you joined right out of high school?
Yep, 3 weeks after high school, and I didn't make a decision that I was going to go in the military until about April, before I graduated in 1990. And I went into the Marine Corps Recruiting Center, and I was impressed with what they had told me, and it seemed to be the best career move that I could make at that time. I was 18, 19 years old, and so I joined the Marine Corps.
Did you enjoy your time when you served?
I did. It was probably the best decision that I possibly ever could have made in my life, because the Marine Corps provided a foundation of moral and ethics, and also a physical attributes. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I was probably in the best shape of my life. So really, from that perspective, everything that I have done in my life has always been built on, in part, that foundation that I acquired from being in the Marine Corps.
With Veterans Day approaching, what does it mean to you to be a veteran?
Well, I've learned through time that being a veteran is probably, again, the best decision that I have ever made, is to go in the military. Because as a veteran in this country, you're thought of and appreciated at a higher level than if you were just a normal civilian, because of the sacrifices that you made. And as I got older, and I'm 41 now, I have learned that the benefits of being a veteran, such as the health benefits with the VA, some of the extra points that you get if you do tests in the government, and those type of benefits have benefited me throughout my entire 20 years after going into the military.
Do you have any regrets from the military or the time that you served?
I don't have any regrets, but I wish that I would have done 20 years in the military. Not necessarily have done the 20 years, but I probably would have enjoyed the benefits of being retired at my age right now, because the way that the economy had changed in the last 20 years has taught me that a job in the military and doing 20 years is very rare these days. And so if I have any regrets, it's the fact that I didn't get those benefits from doing 20 years.
Do you believe serving your country is the same as supporting a war?
No, I don't. I think if you support a war, anyone can do that, because everyone has their opinion why a certain country is in a war. But serving in the military in a war, I think, is completely different, because it requires you to actually do something. And I have served this country during wartime, and it was scary. I was very young, so I think the two are different.
What Go ahead. Can you tell me what service you were in and why you chose that branch?
First of all, I was in the 174th Armored Infantry Battalion, New York Army National Guard. I was 16 years old when I joined. Then I went to the U.S. Navy in 1957, May 11th, by the way, 1957, April 11th, I'm sorry. And then I went, many things I did, but anyways, then I went in the Navy anyway, 1957.
And why did you choose to go in the Navy?
Well, I was in the National Guard and I didn't want to be in the Army. But the Navy offered me a great deal. I went to aviation school and they offered me aviation electronics school. That's why I went in the Navy.
Well, what did you do as in the aviation electronics school?
Well, I went to Bainbridge, Maryland. That was my boot camp. By the way, it's closed now. But anyway, then I went to Millington, Tennessee to what they call an A school. And I went there for about a year and it was all aviation electronics.
Can you tell us what exactly you did in your time of service?
Yeah, okay. From Bainbridge, from Millington, Tennessee, I graduated in A school. And then I went out to Norman, Oklahoma, which was called Aviation Preparatory School. And then from there, I went out west to California. It was called Imperial Beach, California. And I went in helicopters. I was in HS-8, which was helicopter anti-submarine. Also search and rescue we did.
Can you tell us about your transition into the military, how it was for you, and then after the fact of when you decided to get out and become a civilian again?
Well, first of all, when I went in the military, I was a young man going to high school. And then I had little problems in high school. So I decided to join the service, and that was then in '57.
If you don't mind telling us, like, what kind of problems that led you into wanting to join the military?
Well, I didn't like high school that much, of course, but I was almost a senior. I was a junior. And then I got little problems as a kid, and that's what made me join the Navy.
Okay. So you joined the military. How long did you spend in?
I had 4.5 years in the U.S. Navy. But anyway, from when I went out to Imperial Beach, and that was our base for our squadron. And then I took 2 cruises overseas. The first cruise I went overseas, it was more or less in peacetime. And I had a 7-month cruise, 58 and 1958. But we also went to Lebanon then. We were cruising Lebanon when they had the Lebanon skirmish.
Can you tell us about your transition out of the military and how you changed as a person?
Well, let me tell you first of all about the Navy and what I did in there. Again, I was anti-submarine, and also I was search and rescue. And I was in there, and we went to Lebanon. Then I was one of the first outfits that went to Vietnam, but we went to Laos. We flew the Marines into Laos. That was in 1961. In fact, it was on my birthday, January 1st, 1961. And that was when they said there wasn't no Vietnam, but there was. And when I got out of the Navy, they sent me to, I got out in San Diego, California. And the transition they did for us, we had to go like 3 weeks to get out of the service and become in civilian life again. And it was kind of a transition, yes. But I was a young man. I was only 21 years old. And I come back here, and I didn't have no real battles. I was over in Nam, and we flew Marines in there, but I was never in no firefights or nothing like that. But to come out of the service after 4.5 years, there's a transition. Sure, there is a transition or whatever.
You recently, if you don't mind talking about this, had a bout with cancer.
Yes, I did.
Do you think the military helped you to be ready or more prepared than that than a normal person would be?
Well, let me tell you, that was the greatest time in my life other than having children. The military was great for me. I loved it. It was the greatest thing I ever did in my life. Again, a young man, 17 years old till I was 21. It was great. Sure, it helped me. It gave me the confidence. You know, I was trained real well.
I had something else I wanted to ask. You joined the first the Guard,
Yes.
and then the Navy. You didn't graduate high school.
No, I didn't. But my first year in the Navy, I got my GED. 1958, I got my GED.
What made you want to join the military before you finished? Just to get away, or just because you didn't like high school?
Well, yes, because I did like high school. But, you know, it was just after the Korean War, and I was just a typical American that wanted to go and take care of my country, and be honest with you, yeah. I was a young kid that says, I want to be there and be part of my country and be part of a serviceman.
Is there anything any life experiences you've had where you look back on it and you think, if I didn't spend my time serving my country, it might have been a little different?
Oh, definitely. There's no doubt about it. I wish all kids would do it now. When, in my day and age, most everybody went in the service. And it was a thing that we believed in. And also, yes, it gave me, I tell you, the training, when I come out, it was great. I just can't tell you enough about it. I don't know how to explain it.
12-12-12 concert will recently help those hit hardest by Superstorm Sandy. It's been more than a month since that devastating storm hit the Northeast. Many lost everything and are still homeless. The concert starts at 7:30 and will feature performances by Bon Jovi, the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, and 12-12.
Can you give me your full name and rank when you were in?
Harold Benkert. I was a E5. I was a sergeant, and I was in the service from August 7, 67 to April 5th, 1970.
And what service were you in, and why did you choose that branch?
I was in the Army, and actually I got drafted, and I enlisted to get a cushier job, but it never happened that way. And the only reason I went in because I got drafted, and that's why I enlisted.
So, a lot of people don't realize what the draft is, but can you go into why you decided to enlist, even though you didn't get that, but you chose to enlist instead of drafting?
I chose to enlist to get because I didn't want to go and do the do a job that I didn't want to do. I enlisted to and I went into military intelligence, and it was I figured I had a cushier job.
Can you tell us about your transition into the military and how that was for you?
Well, that was the first time I was away from home. I was only 18. First time I was away from home, and without parents or on a camping trip or something like that. But I was away. I was on my own. I grew up fast. You had to. It was bad. I was homesick. I often thought, what the hell did I do this for? But it turned out to be the betterment for me.
How was your transition after being in the military, getting back out and being a civilian again?
That's an entirely different story. Once I came back, once I got out, I came right out of Vietnam in April 1970, and I came home. And
let's hold one second. So tell me about your transition back into civilian life and how that affected you.
It was hard and it was easy, but it was easy getting back here because I was back home. I had my car, I had all the things that I wanted I didn't have over there. But it was hard mentally. I came back home and I got married, and I still wasn't ready, transitionalized to be married. I still had the chip on my shoulder for being in Vietnam, and it didn't work out, and it was typical of the guys coming back home at that time. It always played on your mind. You had the dreams, you had the nightmares, and it just didn't. It really didn't slide into being a civilian again. And at that time, they didn't have no procedures for treating that.
Did you ever approach the VA or try to get any help on your own?
Yes, I called the VA, and as a matter of fact, that's how I got in the National Guard. I went up. I was doing counseling for my they call it PTSD now. I was doing counseling, and one of the counselors up there was a captain in the military in the National Guard. He said, "Why don't you try try a year with us? You'll get back into the frame of things." And once I get back in the frame of things, I enlisted in the Guard for a year, and I felt better. I was back in the military. I had the uniform on, doing the stuff I did over there, and I felt really better. But it was too late to save my marriage, and but I felt better. So I stayed in there for 23 years. And it really helped me. I was the camaraderie and doing the Army stuff that I was doing overseas. It really helped me.
Okay.
So, what's your name and rank?
Kevin C. Knezovic, and I was an information system technician, second class petty officer.
In the United States Navy.
Yes, in the United States Navy.
Okay, the German Navy. Okay, so can you tell us about your transition from civilian life into the military?
Okay, when I first got in, I was 18 years old. I was 18 years old. I joined the military because I didn't know what I wanted to go to school for. So I figured, why not do 4 years, get money for college, see the world. But it was quite a culture shock. It was my first time away from home for a long period of time. They break you down in boot camp and build you back up. So it was definitely a shock for me. Change of lifestyle, but it definitely made me a better person. It made me the person that I am today.
Can you talk about what you did while you were in the Navy and any noteworthy things you might have seen, heard, or done?
Well, on my first duty station, I was stationed in Japan, and basically the point of our ship was to show the presence of the Navy, the good side, public relations basically. And we spent a lot of time in foreign countries doing foreign aid and community relations. We went to orphanages, helped rebuild, stuff along that lines. It really got me into doing public service and community relations stuff, and I still do that to this day. On a negative part though, being in all these foreign ports and being under 21, we were in these countries where we were allowed to drink. The Navy definitely, at the time, we lived up to the sailor's image of just getting drunk and having fun when we could.
So, you think that affected you all once you got out of the Navy?
When I got out, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I figured I'd come home, try to find work, and people don't realize the transition of getting out of the military back into the civilian life. You kind of miss that structure. And when I tried to find work, I was overqualified and didn't have the education, but I had the experience. So I figured I'd go back to school. Well, being a 27-year-old veteran going to school for the first time, it was kind of tough. And I kind of fell into the college life, drinking a lot, getting in trouble, and I got a DWI. So that first one, kind of shocked me into straightening myself out, and I figured I better get my school going. But a couple of years later, I slipped up again, and I didn't think I had a problem, just like anybody else. I didn't know where I should go or if I should go anywhere. But the second time, I actually got drunk, wrecked my car, and almost killed myself and one of my friends. So that was a real culture shock and just an overall shock to myself. So I decided to reach out to the VA and get help for myself.
Do you think that any of those poor decisions were a result of the struggle of transition back to being a civilian?
I think it had a lot to do with it. I like to call it the Rambo syndrome. Like, you get out of the military feeling useful and like you were a part of something, and then you come home and people don't realize that when you miss that structure, that it's a big difference in your life. You feel kind of useless, like you're not worth anything. I go from working on million-dollar equipment, communication equipment, to working at a fast food place making minimum wage. It's definitely a shock, and if you don't know how to deal with it or try to find ways to deal with it, you take it out on yourself or physically. Like I decided to turn to drinking, and it didn't do me any good.
Is there anything you'd like to say to kind of conclude and wrap up your story? Your overall experience in the Navy was a positive one.
I would never give back any 1 minute of being in the military. It showed me the world. It taught me how to be the person I am today, and it's just a time of my life that I cherish. If I could go back, I'd do it all over again. But as far as my poor decisions and where I'm at now, if it wasn't for the VA and me getting help, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably be in jail if it wasn't for that.
So the VA really helped you in that. Can you talk to us about the recovery process a little bit?
They made me realize that just because I didn't see action and just because I didn't go through anything very insane when I was in the military, that PTSD can affect everybody in different ways. And just talking about it and being around other people that have been in my situation, and just basically getting it off your chest and realizing that doesn't matter whether you've seen action, whether you haven't, it affects people at every possible way.
All right.
What service were you in, and why did you choose that branch?
Well, I was in the Army, and during the time of my life when I was young, we was drafted. So I was drafted into the Army.
And why'd you choose it? Well, you were drafted in the
Yeah,
Army.
I was drafted into the Army. At that time, the only voluntary services were the Marines, the Navy, and the Air Force. All the other, if you was drafted, you was automatically sent to the Army.
Tell us about your transition into the military and then back to a civilian, how that affected you and your experience from the military.
Well, the transition into the military, I felt that it was a badge of honor because after going through basic training, AIT, and finally jump school, which is paratrooper school, I felt strong as a person, and I felt like I was a warrior of sort, and so it was a sense of pride. Coming out of the military and after going to Vietnam and spending 13 months there, I felt pretty much good about it until I got back to the States, and then they started spitting on us and all of the things they said to us about being baby killers. So that made my adjustment period kind of difficult because I thought that I had served my country and I thought that I had done it in a noble way. But then coming back and finding that all of the civilians was dissatisfied with the way that what we had done, the actions that we was involved with, it was kind of disappointing at that point.
Just look, oh, sorry, right at me.
Okay. And when you was talking about adjustment periods, when I came home, it was kind of expectations that your family have of you. You know, they sent you away as one person, you came back as a grown man, as another person. And it was difficult trying to adjust to family and friends. And over time, because of PTSD, which I didn't realize that I was suffering with, you start withdrawing yourself from people that you're not familiar with. Like if you're not around soldiers or people with shared experiences, you become more and more isolated. And that was the way my life developed. That's where I finally went to, you know, the development of isolating myself. And it was a kind of a lonely place, but because of my military training, I thought that I was tough and everybody else was weak. So, you know, that's the way I justified myself in going in the direction that I did.
With spending your time overseas and the action that you saw, what did it mean for you to be coming home?
Well, it meant that I was coming home to safety. The one thing, you know, I was no longer threatened that my life was going to be taken away in that manner, you know, in war. Because in war, it's a constant feel that you are threatened, that next day you might not be alive. It wasn't so much a thing of a fear, but it was something that you had resigned yourself to, that you was going to die. And then coming back and knowing and realizing that I hadn't died, then it was a kind of a guilt because so many of your friends and your comrades, they lost their lives. And then the question become, why did I survive? And what do this mean that I survived? What purpose do my life have, or what should I be doing now? Since I did survive, and to justify, you know, the death of people that you cared for and people that you knew.
If you could say anything to veterans who don't know how to get help or think they don't need help or have PST, what would you?
Well, I would say to any veteran, if they was in the military is very much aware, even of the training that we receive, how it changed our lives. And they have people in place that are willing and able to help people, because once you come back to civilian life and you have to deal with people that don't have that experience, then you feel let down because you've been accustomed to depending on your comrades, depending on your peers and your fellow soldiers, and they had the same feeling towards you. But when you come back and find that life and death is not a situation that you live with in civilian life, it's very difficult to adjust, even if you haven't been in combat. But if you have been in combat, I would recommend, and even in service, to justify yourself as soon as you get out of the military. Go to the VA, go down and talk to the people there, because you transition back into a position where people understand you, they understand where you're coming from, and you're not judged to be wrong or different. You just have a different experience, and it will help you to adjust back into civilian life. I remember going down in 2007 when they called me in because I have diabetes, and I was thinking to myself, I don't need this. But then after I talked to a counselor, I went back to work, and once I got back to work, everything was so different. The way that I contacted my customers, the way I talked to them, the way I felt about them, and I immediately got on the phone and called back. And for 5 years, I have continually gone down once every month. And even my counselor asked me, why do you come? You don't seem to need it. But I don't want to fall back into that place where I were. It's a constant reminder to me of where I was and where I am now. And when I came to college first, it was difficult for me to sit on the front row. But I convinced myself that no one in the classroom was a threat to me. So then I started sitting on the front row. And those little steps help you change yourself, because we are not aware we are in a mode of combat. We are in a mode of protecting some interests and fighting and those type things. So we lose contact with how different we are to the people that once we come back home, even to our families. And
is there anything such as like sitting in the front row of the classroom, stuff like that people just would never think of, simple things that you found more difficult when you came back, or actually hard to deal with, stuff that people wouldn't know you were, having trouble with?
yeah, any social situation, I would always gravitate to the back of the room. And even you're always preparing yourself in a defensive way. I thought that I was pretty out there, because I would walk down the street, and if I'm facing someone, they're coming toward me, I've already created in my mind different ways that I could do harm to them if they tried to attack me. And I felt bad about that, but it was a defensive position that I had learned. And when I started going to the VA, they started counseling me about it. They said, well, no, you're not different. You're just in a heightened of alertness. And certain things that people don't understand, just like people touching you and those type things. People coming up saying things to you and putting themselves in a position that you know as a soldier that they are not able to defend themselves in that position. And you're always having to caution yourself that you are not in that environment anymore. This person is no longer a threat to you. I even got so far, I don't even carry a gun or don't even own one, because after Vietnam, I saw what guns do. And coming here, I'm not a hunter or a sportsman, so the only reason I would have a gun is to kill another person. And in my training, I feel that I'm sufficient to defend myself in any situation that I find myself in without weapons. So it's a lot of things that happen, and I can honestly say I was in Vietnam in '67 to '68, and since I came out of the military, I have never slept a whole 8-hour night. I sleep 2 hours, up 2, sleep 2, up 2, and I got myself to the point that I don't get out of bed. But it's a lot of things that you do. Your eating habits, everything changes.
I think that was gold. Only Lindsay Gaming is a super close cool how you only have to go back to my great grandpa, and like our family wasn't American at all. My great grandpa didn't speak English. Nothing. And then his son's fighting for USA in World War II. Ready to go?